Welcome to Minerva, a monthly show where we discuss the mysteries. We hope to give you enough information that you can go away and do your own study. First of all, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Duncan.
Hello.
Today, this is part 2 of our series on Oak Island. So, if you haven't seen part 1, please do go away and watch that first, because that will give you the history of the mystery. Now, what we're going to talk about is all the other links to Oak Island, all the other mysteries that seem to fall in and funnel into this Oak Island mystery. First of all, I think it's best to discuss how we came across Oak Island, how we come into it, because we were both into the Rennes Le Chateau mystery, and through learning the depth and the detail of Rennes Le Chateau, we started to see links travelling away to Oak Island, and that's when you start to discover that, and all of a sudden there's another huge rabbit hole or money pit to fall down. So I think both of us have done that in our time. But for me, it's having Oak Island in general is having its Da Vinci Code moment. When we were into Rennes Le Chateau and we were talking about that, it was before the Da Vinci Code. And the Da Vinci Code came along and completely changed the scene, so to speak. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people interested, involved, wanting to look at it and wanting to learn about Rennes Le Chateau. And it's the same with this. The Curse of Oak Island television show has come along and has really engaged a much wider audience into what is happening on Oak Island. And so we've got lots of different people from lots of different disciplines, thoughts, ideas, all involved in essentially what's happening on this tiny little island, just off of Canada, which is great, because as mystery buffs, so to speak, that's what we want. But one of the other things that ties us together, I think, as researchers is Freemasonry. And we know with Oak Island that there were some very famous Freemasons involved. We had Flynn, we had the President Roosevelt, and of course John Wayne, who I didn't know was a Freemason until I did this research. But John Wayne was a Freemason, and also those three people all dug on the island. They were all actually there working on the island to try and find this treasure. And today there are other Freemasons involved. So when you look at the course of it, all of these Freemasons seem to be involved in and around this mystery. Could it be tied somehow to Freemasonry?
Well, several parts. I think yes, both you and I were introduced to Oak Island through our interest in Rennes Le Chateau, and of course the wonderful thing about this environment is where people are sharing ideas and theories, etc. But I think one of the reasons it gets such a focal point now is because we're all interested in some mystery, and so many of the mysteries relates to some kind of physical, tangible treasure, whether it's papers, whether it's royal jewels, whether it's Ark of the Covenants or bits and pieces. And because we're all looking for a treasure, the only place that we're really told that, look, there is a vault with something hidden in it is Oak Island. It feels like everybody wants to trace that their particular treasure is buried there. Yeah. So I think that's propagates the whole conspiracy theories that run, which of course, then takes us to Freemasonry. To my understanding, I don't think, I don't know if all three actually visited. I know that Roosevelt took a great interest from a distance. I think he helped find for it.
That could be right.
The physical history, but apparently he was interested until all the way through his life.
Right.
I think Errol Flynn and John Wayne, with a sense of it's a curiosity and fun, and money was coming in there for good transfer. But then, to me, that's where a major part of this Masonic link is. I don't see any link in the sense of ritual-wise. Of course, we do have a hole, we do have people going in. But I think it's far more the case of we're talking about celebrity Masons. I know there's other Masons who are working on their ordinary guys, but I think it's just a case Freemasons is a cultural part.
Yes.
And that's separate to what we're actually discussing here. But saying that, I can't deny that there's a little part of me that's kind of excited. There is another stone, isn't there? There's one with I think it's like an H, and it's like either a plus or a cross, and it has a circle with a dot in it. Yeah. And whenever this gets discussed, you have all the theorists of going, a circle with a dot, that's about affinity, and that's the God in the center. And that. But to Masons, obviously, a point in the middle of a circle is something very specific. It's one of our very few unique symbols. I mean, there's the square and compasses are replicated one way or the other, But the dot within a circle, I know we're meant to have two parallel lines to it, but there's something very specific with Masonry. So it's rather tantalizing to see it, but I think that's it. I mean, it could easily be a stone left there by a Mason who lived on the island or put something on, had he had that as his personal mark, a little tip of the hat.
Yeah, and we know that the original searchers as well were from Masonic families, so that could all link into to that, and it all creates a lore around the whole story about Freemasonry, which is interesting and is a thread that is worth continuing to look at. Continuing on around that type of theory, we have how we found it through Rennes Le Chateau and through the Poussin painting. So the Poussin painting is said to be linked to Oak Island in some way, and this is the Shepherds of Arcadia. We've discussed this painting in lots of our other episodes. For me, it doesn't fit at all. It really does fit to Rennes Le Chateau. It doesn't fit to Oak Island. However, when we look at the relief that is at Shugborough Hall in England, there is the Shugborough Monument. And again, we've done an episode on that where we do talk about this in much greater detail. But there is a thumb or a finger that sits over the R in the word Arcadia as part of the famous phrase. And that takes that to mean Acadia, which is the original French word for Nova Scotia. So that's a tantalising little tidbit. And also the DM code below, some people say, can be deciphered to mean Nova Scotia. So it's pointing people in that area, to that province. We've, over years, have picked up lots of different bits of information about the Shugborough Monument. And we've got friends like Ron Mackenzie, who sent me lots and lots and lots of information about this stuff and how it links to Oak Island. Court Lindell, again, another good friend of ours who does great research, and that both of those guys are worth going away and looking at because they really go into the detail of these mysteries. But I still struggle slightly to see how it does link. Certainly when people start drawing islands within the robes and the clothing of people, and it doesn't fit 100%. As a designer, as someone that thinks that these things are intended, I just cannot see that. It goes back to our sacred geometry discussions as well, where I just can't see that. But do you see any link there with the Shepherd's Monument?
Shepherd's Monument. You do think when there's something in a painting, if there's something that's going to be significant, it'll be something that's both subtle and obvious. And so a pointing finger is always something that, does it have a meaning? And as we discussed in this thing about the Shugborough Monument, it is a mystery. We do not know what that bottom phrase really means. And we discussed the possible sort of things. And so, but we jump into this conclusion of we have one almost solid mystery here and we have one almost solid mystery here. We try to link the two things together. And we have this one thing, if that's pointing to that, to mean take it out, then yes, that becomes the French term of what was named over there. So a French term in an English garden. No, it doesn't weigh the material for me. But saying that, the great things about Courts and it's Ray, isn't it? Rob's work is there is so much depth of research. I don't agree with a lot of the conclusions, but if you want to look at source of material, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is great. So let's scratch that one off for now and move this on to one of the real heavy theories, which is pirates.
Okay.
We all love pirates. Certainly anybody into mysteries as kids and treasure stories, etc. If we were going to go down that probable route that I know you normally like to tread, is it probable, plausible, etc.? Is pirates one of the best bets?
Oh man, don't. I would have to say yes. If I had none of this, because a case of I feel almost embarrassing. Because if you're telling me, if it is a purposely built treasure vault, what treasure is likely to be in such a location, then yeah, pirate treasure would seem plausible to me. But we have to keep certain things into perspective. One, it is very rare. We only know of one pirate that ever could have possibly have done it. Because the general rule was, on a pirate ship, whatever booty you got, you had to share amongst the crew. And there was amount for each player. And if a captain was doing something dishonest to the whole crew, they're cutthroats. Yeah, that's half the thing of being a pirate. They didn't like the leader. Right, you want in, get rid of him. And so we have to deal with that reality of pirates. But there are stories, and again with Captain Kidd, I believe, where they do get certain hordes where you're dealing with massive golden crosses, which of course is not the easiest thing to break up into pieces for everybody to have their share. And so if there is something like that, there could be an argument of going, right, okay, lads, look, we can't divide this up. Let's put it here. It's our rainy day fund. It's something there. You do have Captain Kidd allegedly turning around and say, well, where is your treasure? And he said, it's buried where only myself and death or something knows where it is. But, we also have to take in the reality of pirates. It's a short life career. Yeah. It is a case of, in most cases, and actually some of the good pirate captains knew the system, get as much booty as you can, go straight back to harbour so all the crew spends it, so they're all eager to go out and get some more, because it's a way of life. It's not the case of I'm looking for my retirement fund, I'm just looking at survival. But if asked a blunt question, the likelihood, because everything else, parchments, anything that's degradable, if you're going to put it into a water-sogged, if you have got these traps going, but also in a swamp land, you've got to put something in there that is hardly likely to be perishable.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think pirate, if we believe there's a treasure, pirates is a great way to go. On a very clean segue from pirates is straight through to the Knights Templar, our good old friends. We've mentioned them again, and the reason I say that is that through research and through learning for myself, there are those stories that pirates or the Knights Templar did turn into pirates. When we see that pirates fly that very famous Jolly Roger, the skull and the crossfire bones, that's a Templar device. We know that's a Templar device. It's a memento mori. It reminds us of death and everything around it. So there's a really interesting link, I think, with the Knights Templar. And when we go back through this mystery, and what other people will say is that the treasure of the temple in Jerusalem was captured by the Knights Templar. It was brought to France, and when they were disbanded, somehow they got away and they got down to La Rochelle, filled the boats with it, and they literally sailed off into the distance. We never saw them again. So did they sail off and become pirates? Did they sail off and go to Nova Scotia and hide their treasure?
I'm biting my tongue and trying to keep a poker face. I'm failing dismally. Right, okay, let's go through the bits. Yes, the normal research is a sense of for the actual fleet for the Knights Templar, their battle flag is the skull and crossbones. Yeah. I mean, that is such, when we're looking for the idea of it going into pirating, it seems, it's not just a flag, it's meant to be their battle flag of going in. But you're quite right, being used as a statement of fear. It's a case of, we're coming to battle, we are death. That's what the whole idea of it. It's why when we look at gravestones, it's very much through the Victorian period where they saw skull and crossbones. They thought it meant either Freemasonry or they thought it meant piracy. But to be honest, it's just that symbol that has always meant this is death. This is the memory of it. And so it is easy to make that drift to go, the pirates, the Knights Templars are no longer the Knights of Christ, and so they're going to make a living being completely immoral people, stealing money off everybody else. But the other thing is we have to look at this flag. Now, we accept it as being so much a pirate flag, not because of history, but because of Hollywood. We see of a Freemason, Errol Flynn, flying with this flag on, and so we assume it's that's a pirate flag. But each pirate had their own device. It was always normally something terrifying. It's like there'd be an hourglass and death next to it. But it was the way they identified themselves. It was not a standardized flag. And so to make this, that's there and that's there, it's not. It's enigmatic, it's nice. But no, I can't quite see it. And plus the other thing is, if let's say there was a mass of wealth that the Templars took out for La Rochelle, they're now they're a disbanded order. They're on the run. Anybody who's on the run, the thing you're going to need is some hard cash to actually either set yourself up somewhere else, find security somewhere else. So what you're going to do, you're going to go to this place where there's virtually nothing and bury all your valuables in the ground. There's no practical sense to it. You'd need that currency to carry on the business, unless, of course, they're going to say it's some other treasure that they possibly possess that was sacred and needed to hide. But that's another thing.
Yeah, and I think on that theory that we then carry on with that let's say they didn't go to Nova Scotia, that the Knights Templar then went on all the way round to Scotland, to Rennes Le Chateau, which is another thing. And again, we've done an episode on that previously, so it all links in very nicely. But when we talk about Rennes Le Chateau, we talk about Henry Sinclair going from Scotland over to that part of the world, and that's pretty well documented. I think I think we both probably agree that there is Scottish findings. There's a small Scottish castle, I believe. There's some walls which are done in the same way as they would build in Scotland. So we believe that he was in the area. And again, folklore tells us that he comes back and he gets the architects and the stonemasons to put maize within the chapel there at Roslin way before we were supposed to have found the Americas.
Yeah.
So is there a potential, or is there anything that you can buy into that says he went over there and took some type of treasure to bury?
Right. Okay. First thing, I do believe that Henry Sinclair made that journey. As you said, I think it's fairly balanced document in the sense of his time away and coming back. But again, let's look at the reasoning behind it. When we hear so many of these theories, we have to focus on the primary aspect. We're looking at a vault, something you want to bury. And so what's the purpose of what you need to bury, besides as much as what it actually is? So if this guy goes all the way over to North Scotia, finds something, feels inclined to bury it, why? What does he need to leave there? He's coming back, whatever he wants, unless he's looking for a second trip. But the second trip has to be financed from Scotland. And so again, it makes more logic to bring it back to pay for the next visit to go through. Doesn't make sense. And as for the corner at Rennes Le Chateau, I think it's been studied enough where we've had flooring experts going in and going, yeah, it could be, but it's so abstract. It could be virtually any a range of different plants. Yeah. But the other thing is a case of if he wanted to put in stone evidence that he'd been to the other side of the world, as it were, he's a sailor, a cartographer. It's a case of, do you know what? There's a map of where I went. But not just, I'm going to use this particular plant, abstractly carve it on there so you all know I've been. No, it doesn't make sense.
Okay, so let's scrap the Knights Templar as a theory, and let's move on to something a little more esoteric. Let's talk about Bacon, Shakespeare, the manuscripts, the Rosicrucians, etc., because that's another big part that is linked to this mystery. I think one of the reasons this is linked is because in the early finds, they say that when they were drilling, they found pieces of parchment. They've later on found pieces of leather, and so they believe there is some kind of books or something like that down there. Now, we've done an episode on whether or not Bacon wrote Shakespeare, and that's something you can go and watch and research because you'll find some more Oak Island information there. But is there any reason why Sir Francis Bacon, if he was Shakespeare, would go over to Oak Island and bury the manuscripts?
Well, as I say, we covered this in the previous one, and you know my opinion on this. Firstly, let's just take the idea. You would need to have such self-awareness of your own importance to even contemplate it. Even if we can acknowledge that during his time, Francis Bacon was respected, possibly renowned. It's possibly the Einstein of his age. I don't know. Maybe there is that. But to be so self-aware that, especially if you're looking at as he's looking at burying the works of Shakespeare, maybe possibly the lost plays like the Lovelabour's One sort of thing. Let's say that he's going to bury this. I want this for prosperity. He's got to think that this stuff is so valuable to humanity. I'm not going to let them have it now. I'm going to bury it in a time capsule on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
That mental concept of going, that's the plan for me. That's the part. And the other thing is, you've got Bacon, who is possibly, he founded, if not the way that we look at science, definitely the way that we look at things like chemistry, where we have the Baconian theories of testing, his awareness. So his genius is, I'm going to bury these papers in a swamp, a damp swamp where there is so much, no matter what container he puts in, he'll be well aware of the risk of salt water on virtually anything. And so he thinks, this is so valuable, I'm going to put it in the most hazardous to water environment possible. It doesn't make sense at all. I mean, I can understand the tantalizing ideas. I mean, his New Atlantis, wonderful allegory of the idea of how we relate that to the New World, to America. But like we do with Plato, we forget that it's an allegory about it. It's not necessarily saying, actually, I have actually built the seed of wisdom and left it in a small damp island of in Nova Scotia. No, I can't see it. Can't see it at all.
It's really interesting because one of the theories goes along the lines that he was working with Mercury at the time and how to preserve documents. And again, they believe that is part of this mystery forms around that fact that whether or not these are vaults or some kind of devices to hold Mercury and these manuscripts be in those, preserved for all time. But I do have to agree with you on that. For once, I do have to agree with you on that sense that it would have to be so much self-awareness and it's so much effort to go to just to hide those. I don't go along with that theory, but it's one of very many, and we're only going to be able to really tackle a few of these. So for people watching, we're trying to tee these up for them so they can go away. They might find interest in one of these particular ones.
Yeah.
And go away and then do some further research on it, which is fantastic. So I want to end on one more, which I find really interesting, and it's a friend of ours, Andrew Gough, who is a television presenter and very well known in the Rennes Le Chateau circles when we were talking about Rennes Le Chateau a lot. And he had a great website that brought a lot of people together. And he was contacted by a guy called Wills, who essentially said to him, I know the secrets of Oak Island. I've been down there. I've been diving. There are tunnels between all of the islands, including the mainland and the etc. area around there. And King David is buried there with some other things. Now, Andrew had a backwards and forwards with him, and then he eventually dropped off. And there is a great article on his website that people can go and read. We'll put the link in the description for you to go and read that. There's a great article that he's put together. So again, if you want the more detail on that, please go away and look at it. But how do you feel about the Wills theory, so to speak?
Well, it's from us, it's a theory, isn't it? From Will, it's very much, this is the truth. I don't care. I think he puts in it. It doesn't bother me if you believe me or not. I've been there. I've seen it. I've seen these tombs.
Yes.
Which is just scary to write. The sense of, to my understanding, he offers no evidence, no underwater imagery, nothing to support it at all. It's just someone on the internet contacting, Andrew. But take all that aside, let's have a look at the claims. I have a big issue with so many of these things when we're talking about buried tombs of biblical characters, whether New Testament or Old Testament. New Testament I find difficult purely for the obvious sense. I mean, we can't even trace back that period of time.
No.
But to actually then go into Old Testament, how on earth do you do that? How do you prove that this is the tomb of David? We can't find the tomb of Genghis Khan. We can't find Cleopatra's, Anthony's, famous, renowned people, even in their times. And so we're meant to believe that this older one of David, not even Solomon would have been quite cool, but no, we've got David. It makes no sense. There's no credibility. I don't know what credibility you could offer as a fact. But the other part is the case of these underground tunnels. Now, from what I gather from what I've read so far, that we have these islands, but the islands are actually created by silt, because literally on the coast of Canada. So the lush land that's actually there, with either marsh or green, is purely from the silt. Right. Underneath that is bedrock, which is half the problem they've got with actually drilling into the actual ground. So if the modern age is having trouble drilling into solid bedrock, how is it going to be someone from the 18th century with a chisel pickaxe to go through under that, link up the various islands that are there for a tomb? It's just, it's inconceivable. I'm sorry, it makes no credence to me at all.
No, and again, it's another theory, but it is really worth looking into. You mentioned King Solomon there. That's mentioned as well in the document and in Andrew's write-up of it. So, for people watching this that are interested in Oak Island, that maybe haven't heard of this theory, it's a great one to go along. Our next episode, the third part of the series, is going to be our conclusion to what we think about it, but also about the modern history, what they're currently finding on Oak Island, the curse of Oak Island, as in the television show, and everything else. So if you're enjoying this content, please do like, subscribe, and please leave some comments. Let us know if there are any theories that we've missed that you would like us to discuss, or any theories that you want other people to go and look at because you're really passionate about them. That would be fantastic. And we look forward to seeing you again at the next episode.